If there's one type that Generation 5 is most well known for, that's going to be the fighting type Pokemon that were introduced. There's a reason why Generation 5 was ruled by fighting type Pokemon, and we're going to see those specific reasons. Starting off is Ember, the final form of the fire starter. And this thing is actually really great. A 110 HP is great, and a 123 attack stat is beautiful. A 100 special attack stat is pretty good too, meaning you have access to some really great special moves that's going to do a lot of damage. Defense-wise and speed-wise, all of those are at 65, which aren't the best, but a 110 HP will help that out a little bit. But this is actually a great choice if you're wanting to use a fighting type Pokemon as your starter. Next up is Kleeder, and this is actually a Pokemon that you have access to in its early form as Timber pretty early on, and this is actually a great Pokemon as well. A 140 attack stat is insane, plus a 105 HP and a 95 defense means this thing can take hits and it's going to punch a wallop. Special defense stat is pretty low at 65, and its speed stat is horribly low at 45. But this thing has a lot that it can bring, plus if you're running it with Guts and you use an item like Flame Orb, you're going to get that much more power out of your attack stat. This is actually one of the best fighting types that were introduced in this generation, and it's a great addition to your team if you want to play along. Throw is an interesting addition to the fighting type lineup. A 120 HP and 85 defense and special defense means it's got some decent bulk, and a 100 attack means it is able to put some damage out. Plus you can also bring the ability Guts and do some more work that way. This thing does pack a punch, but to look at it you also have to look at its brother Pokemon, Sock. Whereas Throw is trying to be more of a bulky fighting type, Sock doesn't really hold back on that. It has a 125 attack stat, which is great, an 85 speed stat, which is decent, and especially when you first get to this Pokemon, it's actually a decent Pokemon for your team at that time. However, it is a slower Pokemon, and it does kind of hold back in its bulkiness in a sense, because 75 HP defense and special defense aren't the best, but it does have a great attack stat, and it does have that interesting ability Sturdy, meaning you're going to be able to take at least one hit without fainting. So this is an interesting Pokemon. You kind of see Sock and Throw as, you know, two Pokemon that are interesting, that are different, but similar in concept. So if you're wanting to use one or the other, it depends on what you're wanting to bring. Do you want a faster, stronger hitter? Well, Sock is where you want to go for. Do you want a bulkier Pokemon that has lower speed? Well, then Throw is the Pokemon for you. Now, in terms of bulky fighting type Pokemon, in my opinion, Scrafty is way better than Throw could ever be. And that's because Scrafty has a 115 defense, 115 special defense, which are nice. And it does have slightly more speed than Throw at 58. Attack is a little bit lower at 90, but this thing also brings the move Dragon Dance. It means you're going to be able to boost that speed and that attack stat and do some more work. Plus, if you bring the Intimidate Scrafty, you're going to lower your opponent's attack, and you're going to have more survivability. If you bring Moxie, you're going to boost your attack each time you knock out the opponent. So in my opinion, Scrafty is better than Sock and Throw in that regard as a choice for your team. Plus, this thing also has the Dark typing, which gives it some more things that it can play around with. Scrafty, in my opinion, is one of the best fighting type Pokemon. Just keep in mind, it is meant to be a bulky, slow fighting type Pokemon. It's not very fast, and you do need to do some work to amp up that attack stat, but it can be a great addition to your team. Now, say you would prefer a faster fighting type Pokemon rather than a bulky fighting type Pokemon. Well, Mienshao is actually a better choice than Sock. In fact, this thing has the same attack stat as Sock, but it is quite a bit faster at 105 speed. Plus, this thing also has a 95 special attack, meaning you can run some special moves if you choose to do so. Keep in mind, though, this thing is not meant to take hits because of its 65 HP and 60 defenses. It's not going to take that many hits. But you can actually do a lot of things with this thing. Plus, its ability, Reckless, which means recoil moves have a boost in power. That's going to be great because this thing runs high jump kick a lot of the times. You can also run a regenerator set, which each time you switch out, it's going to heal up a little bit. But for your in-game team, you're not really worried about survivability in that sense. You're really worried about how much power you can put. And Mineshaw is a great choice as a fighting type Pokemon. Next up is Cobal Lion, and this being one of the legendary Pokemon in Black and White, of course it's got a great spread of stats. A 129 defense and a 91 HP. This thing can take quite a few hits. Plus a 108 speed. It is quite fast. 90 attack isn't the best, but this thing is really good at taking hits and outspeeding the opponent. Plus, you can teach this thing Swords Dance, so you don't really need to worry about that decently low attack stat, because with a Swords Dance, you're going to be doing a ton of damage. Plus, this thing has a Steel typing as well as Fighting typing, meaning this thing is going to be very great in terms of what Pokemon types it resists. That Steel typing is great, and that helps out its already great defense. Plus, you can run some special moves with a 90 special attack. It's not the best, but you can do it if you wish to. You can teach this thing Calm Mind. That's going to boost up its decent special attack, and it's a kind of weak special defense at 72. But this thing is actually a great choice, and of course, it's being a legendary Pokemon, a lot of people might not want to run it on their team, but surprisingly, you do have access to this thing once you get the move Surf, so you could actually use this as an in-game team. The next Sword of Justice legendary is Terrakion, and this is also a great Pokemon. It has the Rock typing, which normally isn't the best typing for a Pokemon, because it adds a lot of unnecessary weaknesses. However, this thing can hold its own in terms of how good it is in battle. And the main reason why is because it has that 108 speed, which makes it pretty fast, and a 129 attack, which makes it hit things really hard. It has decent bulk as well, with 91 HP, 90 defense and special defense, so this thing can do quite a bit of work. Plus, if you're kind of worried about certain things, not going your way, if you bring this thing on a dark type move, just like any of the other Swords of Justice, you get the Justified boost, which is going to boost the already high attack stat even higher. So this thing is great. It's going to be able to do a lot of damage on your opponent. Plus, you can run super powerful moves like Stone Edge and Close Combat. And surprisingly, it does have access to Quick Attack, which you're not usually going to run, but it is there if you want to. So Terrakion is a great choice, but it's actually a Pokemon that's not available until Victory Road, so you might want to plan for another fighting type. Next up in the Sword of Justice is Verizon, and Verizon is actually a decent Pokemon stats-wise. 129 special defense is pretty great, 108 speed, you're going to outspeed quite a few things, 91 HP, 90 attack, 90 special attack is pretty good too. You can run this as a physical or a special set Pokemon. Its defense is probably its lowest stat at 72, and grass typing doesn't really help it out in terms of survivability. But with those stats, it can still do quite a bit on your team. Just make sure you get this thing from Pinwheel Forest if you decide you want to use it on your team. Arguably, the best Swords of Justice Pokemon is actually one that you're not going to have access to during the in-game playthrough. And in fact, this is an event-only Pokemon. And since the event is over, you're not going to really have access to it at all. But let's go ahead and look at Keldeo. And surprisingly, I think I forgot to add this one to the water typing. So if you noticed it wasn't there, here you go. Here is your Keldeo. Water fighting is a great typing. It's great offensive, and you're going to be able to hit a lot of things super effective. Plus, its stats are great as well. 108 speed, it's going to be very fast. 129 special attack, it hits things so hard. Plus, 91 HP, defense and special defense is going to be great. You're going to be able to survive some hits as well. Its 72 attack isn't the best, but with Justified, you might be able to get some surprise hits on that stat if you get that attack boost. Keldeo is the best of the 4 Swords of Justice, but it's the one that you're not going to be able to play with. And then there's Meloetta. The Pirouette form changes out its normal Psychic typing to normal Fighting typing. And we'll have to look at this, even though this is also an event Pokemon that you're not going to have access to. Let's just kind of look at its stats, because it has great stats. 128 attack, 128 speed. It's fast, it hits hard, and it might not be the most bulky Pokemon, but it does have some decent bulk with 100 HP and 90 defense. This thing is pretty cool, but you're not going to be able to use it as your in-game team Pokemon. So, unfortunately, the cool normal fighting type Pokemon is unavailable. And that is all the fighting type Pokemon in Black and White. Which one are you going to use? There's a lot of great Pokemon in Black and White, and a lot of those great Pokemon happen to be fighting type Pokemon. There's a reason why Generation 5 was known for how many fighting type Pokemon were used competitively. Let me know in the comments which one you're going to use on your in-game team, and I will see you in the next Pokemon video.